What did you think when Auburn hired Hugh Freeze? Feels like forever ago. It's only a few months ago. Auburn hires Hugh Freeze. I noticed a lot of you had some derogatory things to say about him. Shameful. So a lot of you went into the off-field stuff. We talked about it on the show, and I think that you can go back in our archives if you want to relive what I said about all that. Needless to say, I did not go along with the popular narrative, nor did I really care about the popular narrative. I did care about him on the field, though, and I think several of you also had takes about what he would be on the field. One of the consistent themes that I noticed when people talked about Hugh Freeze at Auburn was, hey, if you can get past all the other stuff, the off-the-field stuff, could this be a guy that immediately sparks Auburn? Could they be in a position to be a team that sees this quick turnaround? You know, because your thinking would have been, maybe they've got some good players offensively, but the previous staff just didn't take full advantage of them. And by the very nature of what Hugh Freeze is as an offensive mind, you may see some underutilized pieces just boom, all of a sudden pop this year. It's not bad logic. It's not the worst logic I've ever heard, but they need players. That was always the prerequisite. Any turnaround is going to require players. And Hugh Freeze goes through spring at Auburn, and then after spring was over, he was, I would say, about as adamant as one could be in admitting we don't really have what we need at quarterback yet. Now, I've still not given up faith in Robbie Ashford. I guess that's just a hill that I'm prepared to die on. But Hugh Freeze, maybe he hasn't given up on him either, but he did want to insert some more competition into that room. The reason I mention that is because they did. In fact, Auburn was a big player in the transfer portal. Do you know how good a portal cycle this was for Auburn? Auburn's been portaling. They've been portaling hard down there. So they've added 15 overall. They added 8 4-star rated players. That's tied for the most in FBS. And they added a quarterback. Finally, they added Pate Thorne from Michigan State. Talked about him a lot last week. We've talked about him a lot throughout his career. He adds 49 career passing touchdowns to that room. I was looking at what Nathan King was saying over on auburnundercover.com. How do we put that number into context? Well, Pate Thorne comes in with 49 career passing touchdowns. That is 7 times more than the rest of that room had. Experience. Yes, he brings it and they didn't have it. Michigan State last year, if you're an Auburn fan and you haven't really watched a lot of Pate Thorne, you just know he played for Michigan State. He had a really good year 2 years ago. Last year, pretty subpar. Well, let me tell you what changed. They couldn't run the ball last year, and they were really good at it the year before, and that's it. That's what changed. Had a few more injury concerns last year, but really by and large, they had Kenneth Walker III, who got royally screwed along with Will Anderson out of making a trip to New York City in 2021. Then in 2022, they didn't have that, and they were terrible. Some of the worst rushing numbers you could ever see. And Pate Thorne is many things, but Caleb Williams or Bryce Young, he is not. That's not a guy that's just going to take a team and single-handedly will them up and down the field. He's a good talent, not a transcendent talent. Well, I'll tell you one of the things that we can know about Auburn with all the question marks around. They'll be able to run the football, or at least they'll be able to run it a whole heck of a lot better than Michigan State could last year. So with that alone, just that dynamic, you can expect some pretty decent quarterback play at least. Then you get the infusion with Pate Thorne and Hugh Freeze, and let's see what comes of that. And then also, what do we get? At the very, very, very least, we get competition in the quarterback room there. This is why Auburn's a winner. I didn't even put them in the transfer portal segment because I wanted to talk about them individually. But Auburn, they made big moves. Like I said, you got the quarterback there. They added Caleb Burton shortly thereafter. He was one of those wide receivers that was in the portal, just couldn't quite crack the starting rotation at Ohio State. Former 4-star guy. He goes to Auburn. They may still make a few moves yet because there are still guys out there, but added 8 4-star guys. Tied for most in FBS, like I said. Rivaldo Fairweather, remember him? That was the tight end out of FIU. We spoke about him a while back. They added some good pieces. Now, I cannot tell you how many wins that's going to be worth, but I can tell you that they were number 4 overall in the transfer portal rankings, and Hugh Freeze understands this is not the rebuild era. Certainly you need to have one down there, but this is the rebuild and win in the meantime era. Lincoln Riley ruined it. Like I've told you many times, for a lot of people, Lincoln Riley sort of kind of ruined it. And he showed that you don't have to You don't have to miss a bowl game while you begin your rebuild. You can sort of rebuild and go play for conference championship. Brian Kelly, for that matter, did the same thing in the SEC West last year. So, yeah, they start with UMass. They go to Cal. Yes, Auburn goes to Cal. The Cal Bears also a sneaky, really good portal team this year. They start conference play in week 4 on the road at A&M. They play Georgia. It's the Auburn schedule. You know how ridiculous it is every year. So the Auburn Tigers, a lot of people still out to lunch on them. I think that their portal class has gone overlooked a little bit. You got a bunch of shine on Colorado, USC. I don't think a ton of people have talked about Auburn, and there they sit in the top 5. They got the 7th best odds to win the SEC, for the record. That would put them ahead of Mississippi State, Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas, Missouri, and Kentucky, and Vanderbilt.